So Erica Kirk and Candace Owens sort of had a gloves off kind of moments, and now the magosphere has to pick a side, influencer by influencer, voice by voice. So Benny Johnson tweets out, Erica Kirk goes absolutely scorched earth against evil people monetizing Charlie Kirk's death and attacking her family and the families of those close to Charlie and TPUSA. The Fox News anchor audibly gasps live. So here he's saying evil people. He has chosen a side. Jack Posobiec here. It's very clear that Tyler Robinson is the killer, and the most obvious evidence is that his parents turned him in. Okay, well, I'll remind Jack Posobiec that Candace Owens has claimed that actually the story of Tyler Robinson being turned in is not as straightforward as was originally reported. What she said is that a friend of the family who was retired law enforcement approached his parents and said, your kid is the prime suspect, so they're going to come get him. So either they come get him or you go and talk to the cops. It's going to be one way or the other. Now, is that true or not? I don't know. That is why it would have been really helpful to have a conversation about that live, uncensored, on air, which Candace Owens clearly wanted to make happen once the invite was put out, but then Turning Points weaseled out of it. So there we go. He has picked a side. We're not going to play all these videos because we'll be here all day. But Tim Pool there made his opinion pretty known. Candace Owens is a fucking evil scumbag and a degenerate C-word. She's burning everything down and she's gloating and smiling while she does it. The only person who benefited the most from Charlie Kirk's death is Candace Owens. All right. He's picked a side. Riley Gaines has picked a side. Riley Gaines wrecks Candace Owens. Riley easily debunks more of Candace's lies and torches her ridiculous theories. So a lot of people lining up against Candace Owens now. And this guy really shouldn't be included in the influencer space, but it's teachable in that notice how all these independent media people have the same take as Sean Hannity, right? That kind of tells you how independent media becomes not so independent when the right incentives line up.
These people are all getting paid, man. What Marjorie Taylor Greene said about influenceable, I am sure that's true. A lot of these people probably get paid through influenceable, and that's their living, man. That's why their take is so completely uniform and really the opposite of independent. It's just like corporate media in a different medium where you can tell they got an order of how to frame this and they all just do that.
So Sean Hannity's take is people need to leave Erica Kirk alone and show some level of decency. Once again, as we said in the last segment, people were leaving her alone.
Right.
People were leaving her alone. I mean, yeah, you're going to have accounts with limited followerships talk shit online. That is par for the course when you are a famous person, especially when you're famous online. But Candace Owens never went at Erica Kirk. This has gotten to a point where TPUSA had to deploy Erica Kirk because they were getting desperate because they were losing. They were losing the public opinion battle. And so people did not go after Erica Kirk. That's the thing that's really kind of crazy about this. Here is Tucker Carlson, though. Tucker Carlson on the Theo Von show talking about how he doesn't trust the FBI and he does not trust the investigation.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And I love his wife and know his wife well. And so I feel emotional about it. So, I just haven't wanted everything to do with it. But I will say a couple of things. I don't understand the official story at all.
Of his assassination?
I don't understand it. And I want to make sure that there is a truly rigorous and honest federal investigation of it. And I'm definitely concerned about that. A. B, I think that I don't know many of the details, but I know that recently Candace said that Egyptian registered aircraft were following Erica Kirk, Charlie's widow, around for a number of years in different places in the world. That's one of the weirdest things I've ever heard. And I just want to say that is factually true. That's true. So that's like the one data point that I happen to know is true. What does that mean? I have literally no idea. I can't even guess, but that's very, very strange.
And
okay, so there's another point that's now been substantiated by another source. Candace has provided receipts for some of the things she said. She has not for others. But if you trust Tucker's word and that he would not risk the kind of reputational damage that would come from just pulling that out of his ass, then I think you kind of can take that as validation. Now, what
and what's
that
very
means,
strange is the name of one of the pilots was Brad McCrone.
yeah, yeah, right, Brad McCrone. Who is that exactly?
What is Egyptian? It could mean aircrafts from Egypt. Who knows?
I think that they were registered in Egypt.
Got it.
And but that fact is true. So that enough. And it also her claim that there were kind of a disproportionately large number of foreign registered cell phones at the event. That's also true. So what does that add up to? I don't know, but it means that the FBI has a moral and legal obligation to look in every direction and to be open-minded, as you would in any investigation, in journalism, in science. It's all the same process. I don't know the answer, and I'm going to sift through everything as open-mindedly as I can, as honestly as I can, to get to what the truth is. That's science, that's law enforcement, that's journalism. It's all the same. That's justice. And I just want to make sure that is happening, and I just don't have a ton of confidence in the FBI or the men who run it. And I'm not saying that out of ignorance.
No, you're certainly not saying that out of ignorance. That's for sure. And as things came to a head throughout the day, Tucker took to his own social media to expand further upon this point. We'll play some of this.
No American is under some moral obligation to believe everything the government tells you, particularly institutions or agencies that have a long documented, factually documented track record of committing crimes, participating illegally in our political system, for example, as the FBI has done, manufacturing crimes, setting people up, distorting justice. That's the opposite of their job, of course, which is to get to justice through facts and then to tell the rest of us how they arrived at this conclusion, to prove to the rest of us that the right people are being punished. So we're not under any obligation. Of course, we shouldn't invent theories to discredit the FBI, but it's not enough to have government officials tell us, well, this is the truth. We have a right, probably an obligation, to say, well, can you prove it? And if you can't, I don't have to believe you. So if there's one thing that bothers me above all about the investigation into Charlie Kirk, is that is getting lost. As people argue over what happened, we are potentially letting our largest federal law enforcement agency off the hook. It is the job of the FBI to find out what happened and to tell the rest of us, not hide behind, well, it's national security, confidential sources. No, tell us what happened. Show us what happened. Convince us what happened. That's your job. And we shouldn't accept anything less. And by the way, when we do accept something less, then, new explanations fill the vacuum left by the FBI, which we pay to explain to us what happened. And so I'm going to really do my best not to talk about things I don't understand, state things as though I know them when I don't know them. I'm going to do my best to stay out of it because I love Charlie and I want justice to be done in this case. But the rest of us should remain skeptical. We have a duty to remain skeptical, and we should not be ashamed of our skepticism. Thanks.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's an important point to make. And it's important for someone with the status like Tucker has, especially within that whole movement, to make that point that you don't have a moral obligation to swallow what the government tells you. And often when the government is lying most egregiously is when they appeal to that moral sense of shame within people to try and shut them up. This happens every single time. After October 7th, if you criticize Israel, you're an anti-Semite. You're a bad person for questioning Israel's rightful place as this apartheid ethno-state. When the Ukraine war happened, if you question that, it's because you were a Putin sympathizer, or a closeted, Russian authoritarian, blah, blah, blah. After January 6th, if you said, hey, was this a real insurrection? Was this an FBI setup? It's because you were a dangerous insurrectionist. How dare you? What are you, sympathizing with the white supremacists? Or during COVID, if you question any of the public health protocols there, it's because you were an evil person who wanted to make your grandma sick and dead or whatever. This is always what they do. And going back to, obviously, the big one, the one that really got this trend started, at least in this century, was 9/11 and the Iraq War. If you said, wait a minute, why are we attacking a country that had nothing to do with this? They called you a terrorist sympathizer.
Traitor.
Their appeal to shame is what they go to when all else fails. And in this case, just about all else has failed. And what Tucker reminds us of there is that you actually have no duty to surrender to that sort of emotional manipulation. In fact, if you have any duty as a citizen, it is to resist that emotional manipulation and say, no. We're citizens. We're not slaves. We're citizens. We fund the government. If the government is lying to us about an event that is being used, by the way, as a pretext to take away more constitutionally guaranteed rights and liberties that we are entitled to as citizens, then yeah, we have not only a right, but a duty to demand an explanation as to what this cataclysmic event actually was and how it came to be. And it's important to sort of like, put that sort of philosophical point front and center, because when people have no argument is when they just tell you, shut up, you're a bad person for even asking about this. And what makes this so tragically ironic is that one of the guys who used to make this point all the time was Charlie Kirk. That was one of the things he used to say all the time, that you can't stop asking questions. When you stop asking questions, you're not free anymore. And that's absolutely true. But boy, you wouldn't know it to look at the way Turning Point has handled this.
Yeah, it's not working because you've had a total collapse in faith and institutions. You have the same kind of bipartisan consensus on things like invading Venezuela. It remains the case. During the Iraq War, man, the news didn't say shit. This was actually one of my favorite Jon Stewart moments ever. It was after Katrina. And all of a sudden, it was like somebody threw a switch that you could question the Bush administration.
Right.
From 9/11 until 2005, softballs as far as the eye could see.
Yep.
And Stewart played a montage after Katrina of all of a sudden, the press didn't just start asking about Katrina. All of a sudden, they start asking about Iraq.
Right.
They really hadn't questioned the official narrative until after Katrina. They smelled blood in the water. They smelled that the administration was weak enough that they could ask those questions. Brave people that they are. They waited until they felt like they could get away with it, that they wouldn't be able to turn them into traitors in the public mind by asking that. And Jon Stewart played a montage of it. He said, "Oh, the free press. Where the fuck have you guys been?"
Right.
It's this. The difference now is, for those years, the Bush administration was able to not just wrangle the press, they were able to convince the public, like even in the lib rags, like the New York Times, very famously, Judith Miller had a lot to do with pumping up the WMD narrative.
Right.
You can't do that anymore. Like, nobody's buying the Venezuela thing. Who's buying the Venezuela thing? Of any political stripe, like people. Chuck Schumer, yes, again, that bipartisan consensus is there. The Barry Weiss thing, this is part of where this whole thing is, this whole movement is falling apart. So they get this clear, Zionist tool, put her in at CBS, and the assumption is that the kind of people who watch CBS will now be conditioned to accept someone like Barry Weiss as the center, and they'll win over the libs. Right. They'll have their MAGA people and they'll have the libs. That's why Barry Weiss is having Erica Kirk on. That is why. That really sums up the whole strategy behind putting Barry Weiss in that position. Right. They think they're going to get the libs to sympathize with Erica Kirk and and through her to be sympathetic to TPUSA, right? To see it as a legitimate organization, as something that they're at the very least not going to oppose. Hey, we haven't been able to get these MAGA people who cut their teeth on the Epstein files and the deep state to go along with this. But the libs, they'll buy anything if you sell it to them as the establishment narrative, right? I mean, that is the whole CBS tactic, really, to bring the libs into what multiple sclerosis now historically would have told them is far right wing stuff, right? To get them on board with the far right wing stuff, to make that even more of one big pile of mush than it already is. But in times like this, where people are suffering, where they're seeing their livelihoods evaporate, where they're seeing their prosperity evaporate, where they can't afford health care, they can't afford a house, they're not invested in the institutions in that way. You can't get away with things like this the way that you used to. And that's why this is failing.
Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely true. I think that's absolutely true. And I think, yeah, the legacy of the WMD lie is gonna last forever. Like that is just not, like, they are not going to be able to gaslight people on that scale ever again when it comes to, political matters, right? I mean, it's just that's not going to happen. And we're seeing that. That's why, only 38% of Republicans support military intervention in Venezuela, right? Now the COVID stuff, you could say, well, look at how all that shit worked. That's a little different in the sense that you're not appealing to people's sense of politics. You're appealing to a very primal fear in people, an airborne toxin, right? So that's a little different. But I'm talking about when it comes to like war and peace, when it comes to a high profile assassination, when it comes to like this kind of stuff, they're not going to be able to sell that in the political realm, really ever again. I don't think, at least not in our lifetime.
Not
depending on how long our lifetimes are. I mean, we don't really know. That's an open question. I don't know what our longevity expectancy is.
Please clap.